So it's very possible I just got done watching the dumbest movie of the year. But at the same time, at points, maybe the funniest. And then at other points, possibly the most violent. Yeah, I don't know. This movie was kind of all over the place.
Wait! Stop! We'll get to all of that.
So The Toxic Avenger Underrated. I guess this movie is a remake of a film from the 80s. There was this subgenre of movies called trauma films where they were almost purposely bad, but over the top violent on purpose. It was for shock value. They're not known to be good movies, but apparently a lot of these films went on to be cult classics. The Toxic Avenger included, so now we're getting a remake. And this one stars Peter Dinklage, Kevin Bacon, and a handful of others. And what it's about, you have this janitor who works for this pharmaceutical drug company owned by Kevin Bacon, but Peter Dinklage plays this janitor named Winston Goose. How fitting. When one day something catastrophic happens, he is shot and he is thrown into this river of hazardous waste where he will come out spawned a new Toxic Avenger. This is kind of one of those anti-hero stories. There's more to the plot than that as well. He has to raise some money. He finds out he's terminally ill. You'll learn about those details at a different point. What you're here for is finding out, is it worth it when he becomes the monster? And just starting off, I know I'm going to be in the minority when I say this. There were large sections of this movie I thought were pretty boring. Don't get me wrong, if this movie is your type of thing, if you love these movies, these trauma movies, you love these shock and awe movies, you love movies with a very juvenile sense of humor that are blended with a very serious tone, this movie could be right up your alley, and I encourage you to watch it because we don't get a lot of these films anymore. But for me, I would describe this movie as if I could find the perfect hybrid of two movies. Hobo with a shotgun blended with Naked Gun, almost comedy timing, and the dry pan humor of events. It's kind of weird. It meshes at points, other times completely out of place. And this movie is also marketed as an incredibly violent film. In fact, I actually read a review right before I walked into this. I didn't know anything about this movie. I've never seen the original. It's a blind spot. I don't know anything about trauma films, but I heard that this is disgusting and pays homage in the best possible way. This movie is disgusting at like 2 or 3 points. It's incredibly violent, but for the most part, hot take, I don't really think this movie's even that incredibly violent. It's almost all CGI. I think it is actually all CGI, no practical effects, which for me never has any stakes, so the gore doesn't really hold up as well. You can do basically anything in the form of CGI, and it doesn't really do anything for me. But aside from the 2 or 3 points I'm thinking of, this movie's not really that excessively violent. Outside of a couple of climax moments, it goes there when it does, but aside from the shock and awe parts, the deadpan humor, I thought this story was just very cookie cutter, and I was drifting in and out, to be honest, at points. But to start off with what I actually liked about this movie, I think it's nice to see Peter Dinklage in a movie again, you know, outside of ranting about the Snow White dwarves. It's glad he actually is doing something. He's good in this role. I think he does fit in this, and I think he does embody kind of like the comedic timing of this character. Again, I don't have anything to compare it to when it comes to that old school film, but I think for what he's asked to do in this movie, pretty good. Then you have the Baconator himself, Kevin Bacon. I love this dude. I say it in every single review. I actually have friends and family who kind of joke with me about the fact that I'm really into a lot of Kevin Bacon's work, and apparently not a lot of people are, but he's good in this for what he's in, and that's actually going to be a reoccurring theme with the issues I have with this film. You don't get enough Kevin Bacon acting as this zany billionaire of this pharmaceutical company. He's good in spurts, but then he just kind of disappears for large sections of the movie, then he comes back, then he disappears, and it just keeps doing that. If they could have honed it in a little bit more and we got more of his performance, I think he could have been a real standout in this, but since they don't choose to do that and it goes a different route, and there's kind of like 2 or 3 mini stories in this movie, you don't really get as much of the main characters and the main actors and the selling points as I wish I would have. And then you have the violence of the film, like I said. In a couple of the moments when you get it, I think it's really good, especially when you pair it with the very dry sense of humor this movie is obviously going for. I think that pair is very natural, and I think it does work. I see why fans of these movies really do enjoy them, and they were looking forward to this. I never found this movie funny directly when it comes to like the very telegraph lines, but this movie does that thing where like the jokes in the background and posters on the wall are actually the funniest part. And then off in the background, you have somebody saying something that's actually a lot funnier than what you're seeing on screen, but you have to catch it. That's why I relate the sense of humor to Naked Gun. They do that a lot. You have a person talking on the forefront, you're not really thinking too much of it. Hey, what the fuck? Why does he look like that? I can't lie, even though I don't think the majority of this movie was overly effective when it comes to the comedy, it is in that same style of kind of rapid fire jokes. You get a lot of jokes at every scene, and I did belly laugh 2 to 3 scenes, so kudos to this movie for being effectively funny at points. And then lastly, I did really enjoy the villains of this movie for what you get. Again, going back to the acting dilemma where you don't really get enough of them. There's this band in this film. It's kind of a ripoff of Limp Bizkit. At least that's how I interpreted it. These guys called the Screaming Nuts or something. They're kind of a copy of Insane Clown Posse or something like that. And they are funny when they're on screen. They are the main villain for the majority of the film. I was laughing at the majority of their jokes. I thought their mannerisms were funny. There's some ongoing parkour jokes. Their scenes in particular were the best part of this movie, especially one scene with a guy who has a bird head. I didn't know why he had a bird head until I found out why, and I thought that scene was very funny. But when I talk about my negatives with this film, I just feel like this film didn't go far enough in either direction. Don't get me wrong, it's entertaining at spurts, but I wish it would have been more violent. I know that sounds kind of demented to say, but that's the way this movie is marketed. That's the reputation this franchise or these movies have. And I don't really think they ever fully go there because it's trying to be a little bit more modernized and a little bit more accepting. And I'm sure it's also to get this movie distributed. It also sat in distribution hell for like 2 years apparently. So maybe they had to edit a lot of this movie out so that it could even make it to theaters in 2025. But I just found this movie felt like an imitation, like somebody who was a fan of this franchise made this movie. They did all of their best parts, all of their favorite bits, all of their favorite styles of what they loved about the original without really capturing what made those movies so special back in the day. It just felt like somebody kind of doing an homage film, a best of, if you will, of what they used to love about the movies, as opposed to an original standalone movie being done well. And then, as I just said, kind of a double-edged sword. I didn't think the majority of the jokes in this film were very funny, and they are rapid fire, so I give them a pass on that because a couple of them were highly effective. There were other people in my theater who were having a great time, and they were laughing their asses off. So again, take it with a grain of salt. If this feels like something that's up your alley, you probably laughed more than me, and you're probably going to like it a little bit more than me. But lastly, my biggest gripe, and I already said this a couple of times, I don't think they utilize the talent in this movie to its fullest potential. There are moments when you get to see Peter Dinklage at his best, Kevin Bacon at his best, the villains at their best. The opening scene in particular, I think, is really effective for setting the tone of this film. But then it kind of goes off on a different path, and then you have a lot of lore dropped on who this character is. I don't know if they intend on like reviving this franchise or if this was a standalone film, but I just found this story to be kind of derivative at a certain point, and I didn't think anything outside of either watching Toxie, the Toxic Avengers scenes, or the villain scenes to be particularly interesting. I thought Kevin Bacon's entire storyline was pretty half-cooked. I thought this other character that was like a mob boss was completely half-cooked and over the top, although there is one joke related to limb replacement I thought was pretty funny related to his character. And I don't know, I guess I didn't have crazy expectations for this or anything, but I just left kind of feeling like this was mid. I didn't think this was a movie I would ever really care to rewatch. I didn't think the violence was anything I was going to tell everybody you have to rush out and see. It was no Terrifier or anything. I just left kind of feeling like this was something that feels like it was made for a different era. Like this is something that doesn't age particularly well. I felt like I could kind of tell why this movie had distribution issues and they were worried about sending this to theaters, like how this would do in 2025. For reasons I'm stating. I don't know. I didn't hate this film by any means. I just thought it was a complete mixed bag. I thought the good parts were really good and I thought the bad parts were really bad. So I don't know. If I had to do over again, I'd probably wait for streaming. Join the channel down below. Like, comment, subscribe. As always, love talking movies with you. See you in the next review. Peace.